Hello, welcome to News Centre with me, Parikshit Luthra. Parliament disrupted yet again over the Manipur crisis. The Supreme Court heard a case filed by 3 women who were sexually assaulted and paraded naked on the streets. The court pulled up the Manipur Police and came down heavily on the administration for failing to provide details of the FIRs that were filed. The Apex Court asked, why did the police take 14 days to file a case? Meanwhile, the victims called for an independent probe by a special investigation team and opposed the government's move to transfer the matter to the CBI. The case, which was taken up by a bench comprising CJI, Chandrachud, Justice J.B. Pardiwala and Justice Manoj Mishra as well. So this is going to be heard in the courts in the days to come. And of course, the court observations will put a lot of pressure on the government and the Manipur Police as well. Joining us now to take us through the opposition strategy on the Manipur crisis is Manish Tewari, opposition leader, member of parliament and former INB minister as well. Mr. Tewari, what happened today in the Supreme Court was very important. Since day one in parliament, you have been asking for a debate. You've asked for suspension of the business of the House, an explanation from the Prime Minister as well. What next for the opposition strategy? And could you give us a sense, the 21 MPs who visited Manipur, what briefing or what message did they give all the opposition leaders?
Well, Parikshit, what ostensibly happened in the Supreme Court today is perhaps the most poignant reminder of the insensitivity with which the situation in Manipur has unfortunately been handled both by the state government and the central government. If the Supreme Court has to comment, as you were articulating, that they were horrified that 14 days had elapsed and no FIR had been registered after such a reprehensible incident taking place involving the dignity of not one but 3 women, that itself, I think, is a very, very sad commentary about the situation in Manipur. And that is why from day one, the opposition had been demanding a threadbare discussion on the situation in Manipur. Since the Prime Minister had suo moto before the monsoon session commenced, stated in a press interview or in an interaction with the press that what happened in Manipur must make us hang our heads with shame. It was obviously inferred that the Prime Minister would come and make a suo moto statement in both houses of parliament. And it would be followed by a serious and a constructive discussion on the unfortunate ethnic split which has happened in that state and the violence which has been perpetrated since the 3rd of May 2023. And that has not happened. On the contrary, even after a no confidence motion was tabled against the Council of Ministers, the government has been passing bills in both houses of parliament in absolute flagrant violation of all parliamentary propriety, all canons and all traditions which have held the field since 1952.
Right. I would also like to draw your attention to what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court also pointed out that the offences against the women were horrendous. Time is running out for us. There is a great need to have a healing touch in the state. Mr. Tewari, what can that healing touch be? The Home Minister has visited the state. What do you think can be done in order to bring the situation to normalcy, bring some calm to the state?
Well, obviously, no healing touch has been applied. This unfortunate violence commenced on the 3rd of May 2023. We are now entering the August of 2023. So over 2 months have elapsed. And the divide in the state remains as polarized as it was when this unfortunate violence broke out and atrocities got perpetrated, especially on women. And so therefore, if the Supreme Court, the Apex Court, is constrained to observe after 3 months or after 2 months of the violence having commenced, that a healing touch is required, this obviously goes to underscore there is no healing touch. And that is exactly what the parliamentary committee, which visited Manipur, also witnessed, that the cleavage between the communities and the breakdown of the administration is absolutely complete and total.
The court also asked the government for details of the 6,000 FIRs that have been filed in the state since May because of the ethnic clashes. What do you think is the best way forward as far as the probe is concerned? The government is moving to have a CBI probe in this case. Would that be the right way, or should it be a Supreme Court monitored probe which should look at not just the case of these 3 women, but all the 6,000 or 7,000 FIRs that have been filed?
Well, first of all, somebody has to take responsibility. Who's responsible for allowing the situation to get out of hand to an extent that police armories were looted? You're talking about 7,000 FIRs. 6,000 or 7,000 FIRs are possibly filed in a normal situation in a large state, maybe in the span of 1 year. So you can just imagine the extent of violence if 6,000 or 7,000 FIRs, and nobody knows as to what the correct number is, have been registered in a span of 2 months. So under those circumstances, first of all, somebody has to take political responsibility. Where does the buck stop? Does the buck stop with the chief minister? Does the buck stop with the central government? Who in the central government will take responsibility for the situation to get out of hand? What was the role of the state security forces when the central security forces were deployed? Were they given a free hand? These are all very, very important questions which cannot be swept under the table. And that's why, Parikshit, we've been repeatedly pointing out, underscoring, highlighting, emphasizing that ever since 1956, when the first no confidence motion was brought in the Lok Sabha, till the current motion has been brought in the Lok Sabha, there was not a single bill which was passed in either House of Parliament, except perhaps on one occasion when, with the mutual understanding of the opposition and the Treasury benches, 2 bills were allowed to go through. I do not really recall the year from the top of my head. And what you've been seeing since last Wednesday, when the Honorable Speaker accepted the no confidence motion, is that bill after bill is being rammed through both houses. So therefore, there's obviously, when these bills get challenged for different reasons in a court of law, one thing which is going to weigh with the petitioners and also the court, that whether the government had the legislative competence to even introduce this legislation in the House when a motion which clearly states that there's a want of confidence in the Council of Ministers had been admitted and was pending consideration in the Lok Sabha. This is an extremely important issue which goes to the root of the constitutionality of what is happening in the House insofar as the proceedings are concerned. For example, today there was a statutory resolution in order to increase the custom tariffs on LPG and certain other gases, which stood in the name of the finance minister. The resolution said that the custom duty has been increased from 5 to 15%, and it had to be ratified by the Lok Sabha and then subsequently by the Rajya Sabha. But if you read Call and Shakhtar, it says that no substantive business of policy by the government can be introduced once a no confidence motion has been admitted. And here, not only substantive and material business pertaining to policy, but also legislation, which in the case of India does not get amended and holds the field at times for 100 years, at times for 120 years, is just being absolutely bulldozed through in a din.
Right. You have said earlier that it will be a travesty of justice if the Prime Minister does not speak on this issue on the floor of the House. Mr. Tewari, how will things move ahead for the opposition now in the days to come. Piyush Goyal said today outside the Rajya Sabha that they have been trying to have a discussion on Manipur for the last 10 days. The opposition does not seem serious because of political reasons. How would you respond to what Piyush Goyal said earlier today, and what will be the strategy for the days to come for the rest of the opposition session?
Well, this is chicanery and wordplay, because if government was interested, there are notices under Rule 267 for adjournment of business in the Rajya Sabha, and notices under Rule 184 for adjournment of business in the Lok Sabha, which have been given since Thursday every day by different members, at times 45, 50 notices in each house, saying that government business should be adjourned and the situation in Manipur should be discussed. But all adjournment notices have been dismissed out of hand. And therefore, the opposition was then compelled to bring a motion of no confidence. And now even that motion of no confidence is being trifled with by using the 10-day window, which has been given in the rules, which was primarily that if there is an exigency and the no confidence motion debate / vote cannot be held, that was the kind of window which was given to the presiding officer. Now, if that window is being utilized by the government to steamroll legislation at a point in time when clearly there is a motion before the House accepted by the presiding officer which says that there is a want of confidence in the Council of Ministers, I fail to understand how any court of law tomorrow, when it adjudicates on the constitutionality of these bills, will not really look at the legislative competence and the circumstances in which these bills were passed in either House of Parliament.
All right. Mr. Tewari, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC-TV18 News Center, giving us your view of the opposition strategy and your take on what the government has done and said so far on the Manipur crisis. We're going to be heading into